You know, back when I was in the academy, we would follow every toast with a song.
And we're back. This is the next couple episodes will actually be pretty special because we're recording them from the Urson residence here in Street, Maryland, which is pretty special to me because during the summers when I would stay here, Star Trek would be playing on public access. On Channel 24, starting around 8, they would play reruns of DS9. And then on Channel 45, they would play Voyager. Mm-hmm. And if you stayed up long enough and got around the 1 a.m. mark, from 1 a.m. till about 2, no 3, they played about 4 or 5 different episodes of Next Gen.
Wow.
But you had to switch between the channels because they wouldn't be the same episode.
Yeah.
So you would have to kind of watch 4 channels at once. And when you're 10, you know, some of these get lost. But I bring this up because today's episode is one that I watched here a lot growing up. We're reviewing Star Trek The Next Generation Season 2, Episode 12, The Royale, which debuted on March 27th, 1989. The star date, of course, is 42625.4. So, Dad, what do you think of this episode in general when you think about Star Trek and just the general storyline in general?
I like the story very much because it really has mainly just a primary story, not a secondary story. I recently, I've not been a big fan of Ray Bradbury, but I bought an anthology recently of all of his short stories. And, I was thinking before we were going to do this podcast on the Royale, that this story is so sort of focused and tight. It's almost like a Ray Bradbury or a well-designed short story.
Right.
Has a science fiction aspect to it because, they're out in space and there was this, rather ancient, I think 2 centuries old American NASA spacecraft, which is a little bit of a mystery because we really don't know how it got that far out and so forth. Mm-hmm. But it's a real just fun story. It's all if it could have put data into a Sherlock Holmes mode because it was almost a detective story to figure out how to get out.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you bring up Bradbury because versus certain authors like Heinlein, Clarke, and Asimov, Bradbury had more of a social science fiction.
He did,
where
yes.
It's a lot softer in terms of the science, but
yes,
much more about the actual impact that science has on people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you have a really good observation about the Royale being one of those episodes where it kind of looks like it looks at the impact of science and aliens. It's more of a soft science fiction story than it is anything hard.
Right.
And I think one thing that is happening in Season 2 as we go forward, the stories are getting tighter. They're becoming more uniform in terms of following one character or maybe 2 characters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's much tighter narratives and a lot less focus on, I think, gimmicks and a lot more acting, I think, in general.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
But let's dig in to the episode real quick for those listening at home. The Enterprise D enters orbit on the 8th planet of a previously unmapped solar system, Theta 116. This diversion was caused by a report from a Klingon cruiser regarding the discovery of a strange vessel in the atmosphere of the planet below. The Enterprise arrived to investigate. Initial scans by LaForge show the planet is actually inhospitable. Its atmosphere is nitrogen, methane, liquid neon, and the surface temperature is negative 291 degrees Celsius with wind speeds up to 312 meters per second. This is essentially a hell planet, folks. The scans also revealed debris in the orbit of the planet. Commander Riker asked to be kept informed so that they might resume their mission in a timely fashion. One of the things that happens is that Riker visits Captain Picard in his ready room, only to find Picard puzzling over Fermat's last theorem. I actually went and looked this up. Fermat's last theorem is a number theory that was first stated as a theorem by Pierre de Fermat around 1637 in the margin of a copy of Arithmetica. Essentially, what it is that in number theory, and I'm reading this off Wikipedia, because math's not my strong suit, folks. Fermat's last theorem, sometimes called Fermat's conjecture, especially in older texts, states that no three positive integers, a, b, and c, satisfy the equation a to the nth plus b to the nth equals c to the nth for any integer value of nth greater than 2. The case of nth equals 1 and nth equals 2 have been known since antiquity to have infinitely many solutions. Essentially, this is an unsolved problem, and still considered one of the most difficult math problems, in part because there has been no successful proofs of it.
And the fact that Picard is involved in just this intellectual mathematical exercise, and I think at one point he describes it as curiouser and curiouser.
And it's his pastime, too.
Yeah, and it's his pastime. But it sets up the whole demeanor of the episode, that this is, kind of going down the rabbit hole once they go through the revolving doors and so on. And
right.
So
there is a very Alice in Wonderland quality to this.
Yes, there is, exactly.
Kind of jumping genres for a second.
Right.
One thing that I find, before we kind of get into the crux of the episode, one thing that I find interesting about the Ready Room is that Picard often meets staff in there to discuss very important things, but, between the individuals themselves. It's not like they're going to the observation lounge.
Right.
Or one of the conference rooms to have, like, a larger discussion about the mission. But it makes me wonder, like, how often is Picard on the bridge, like, actually in the seat commanding, versus Riker being out there and him being in the ready room? And, I understand that he has free time, but it seems like he has free time between getting to places. So I'm just wondering what I know we asked this in a previous episode, but I'm wondering what the average day-to-day like is for these bridge officers.
I mean, one of the things we need to do is, and you've mentioned this up, that there's sort of a map, a schematic of the Enterprise.
Right.
So I'd like to know, because you bring up a good point, that, Picard and there's a turbo lift, at least one turbo lift on the bridge. And then there's doors.
There's 4.
There's 4 turbo lifts?
No, there's
4 doors.
No, there's 3. So, like, if the screen... So, we'll find a schematic, folks, but if the screen's right here, the view screen...
Right.
Picard's ready room's right here.
Okay.
And there's right there, and then there's one right there, so that's one.
Right.
There's one when they go up the ramp.
Yeah.
And that's the hard cam looking at the bridge.
Yeah.
So when Worf and Data or whoever
Right.
comes up from engineering comes out of here.
Right.
I think this is kind of like a general turbo lift in terms of getting people down to engineering or 10 forward. But there's one there, and I think that there's supposed to be one there because whatever this door is, that takes them to the observation rounds or the conference room where...
Yeah.
But I think there's like 3 turbo
But my
lifts
question
on there.
then, where is Picard? Does Picard's office,
Right.
it's off the bridge.
Yes.
But I remember on an episode, Riker was going somewhere and he said officers' quarters, deck 12 or deck 16.
Deck 9.
Deck 9, right.
Yeah, I did check that out. Like,
Right.
a lot of them are on deck 9. It makes me wonder what the utility of the ready room is. I'm guessing that the captain kind of goes in there while, even at warp speed, it sometimes takes 36 hours at warp 9 to get to their destination.
Well, it seems like
And if so much is done by AI, as they established in the last episode,
Right.
it just makes you wonder what is their actual day-to-day function.
It seems like Picard has an office right off the bridge, which makes good sense. But that's not where he sleeps. That's not his personal quarters.
Right.
And then there's the ready room, which it's smaller than the observation lounge. Which the observation lounge, which they use.
His office is the ready room.
His office is the ready room.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then the observation lounge is.
And that's really in the stern, because whenever you're in there,
that's in the back of the bridge.
Right. Okay. I got it now.
Which is interesting because I would imagine the bridge structure itself, since we're on this tangent for a second, seems very interesting because we know the design of General Starfleet ships have the bridge kind of on the very top of the saucer section.
Mm-hmm.
And it always seems kind of like an exposed position to have people. We were watching J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek, the Chris Pine one,
Right.
last night, and I kept noticing this as well. Like, their shields aren't really working very well in this episode. And in general, if someone started aiming torpedoes and phasers at that general area and knocked out the shields, like, one hit and the entire bridge crew is dead and the ship's basically crippled. Like, there is no other bridge except the battle bridge. But is there a staff down there during battles ready to take over? There's just some weird design things sometimes about the ship.
That's a very good point, because it doesn't make... I mean, it's kind
the NX-01 actually seemed to be integrated into the saucer, not sitting on top of the saucer.
Yeah, I think so. I have to look at that again. But it's kind of reflecting, since they want Starfleet ships, they're kind of act like they're naval vessels. The bridge on ships, of course, is an elevated position for navigational purpose, particularly for close in. And it's in an exposed position. So it's probably affecting, the architectural thinking of the ships. But you bring up a good point that it really would make better sense to put that, because that's a key command and control center, in a more protected position.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've always thought that the design of the ships in Star Trek in general have always been very naturalistic and beautiful, but functionally, and I think this is where sometimes the show gets into more Ray Bradbury than Arthur C. Clarke. Sometimes the functionality doesn't fit for actual functional purposes, but it fits for a story. In many ways, it feels like the Enterprise is just, a big stage for everything else. So, getting back into the story, Miles O'Brien and Riker go down to the transporter room, and they beam up a piece of a vessel that has the word NASA and the old United States of America flag on it, which notably contains 52 stars. So Picard marvels at this puzzle they've discovered, and they start digging in, and they discover down on the surface there is this pocket of kind of breathable atmosphere that they can beam down and investigate what's happening, because they've discovered this signal. So when they beam down there with the way team, it's Riker, Data, and Worf.
Right.
They discover this revolving door that seems to be freestanding out in this kind of perpetual darkness, and above them, they have this shimmering kind of green ceiling of methane gas.
Right. Streaming by,
and they're all kind of just marveling at this. There's something very magical about all of this. And looking to investigate, Riker leads them inside to discover a casino and hotel that is known as the Hotel Royale. And
it comes to find that it's supposed to be in Las Vegas.
Yes. So suddenly they have gone from this mysterious planet, Theta 116, to a hotel, and it... Where do you date this? It looks like 1930s.
Oh, it mentioned that it has that bad guy that comes in named Mickey D.
Yeah.
And I would say it could be... It could actually be from the 30s up into the 50s, possibly. Just the way that the people were dressed. More 1960s, even.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the characters they meet in here are really great.
Yes.
Let me see. Noble Willingham. That's who I wanted to.
Oh, Noble, yes, the
As
Texan.
Texas?
Yes.
I love Noble
Yes,
Willingham.
yes.
He was great in Walker, Texas Ranger. He took over.
He was the general in Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah.
Who really appreciated Adrian Cronauer.
Yeah, right. Just kind of going over some of the notes before we get to the revolving door. One thing about the U.S. flag having 52 stars, it's kind of established that the ship later on is actually the
Charybdis.
The is it Charybdis or pronounced Charybdis?
Charybdis is how I've always said it.
Okay. Did they pronounce it Charybdis in the show?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so I've already pronounced it Charybdis as well, so that's very odd. But it's a 21st century ship that travels somehow so far out into the galaxy. Its U.S. flag has 52 stars. And apparently this ship was sent out for the third attempt to explore beyond our native solar system. You know, just looking at some of the Star Trek canon and knowing what we know about Star Trek Enterprise later on with Jonathan Archer, some of the story seems to be out of sync with the actual show itself. But they also have also had episodes on Voyager, or they had an episode, I think in season 6 of Voyager, where they discover another IASA, which becomes the International kind of Space Organization in the 21st and 22nd century. They've discovered one of the astronauts who orbited Mars. So there's this kind of weird interplay between like NASA and our actual
in the Star Trek universe, the greater one. What year was First Contact supposed to be? 2068?
Yeah, I think it's 2068.
So that's interesting because if this was a 21st century, a piece of debris off a 21st century American spaceship,
2063, April 5th, 2063.
Okay, then it should have happened before then because 2068 was supposed to be after the Third World War. That was a nuclear war and so forth,
which included
Khan and the eugenics
wars.
Stuff,
yeah,
and that sort of thing. So yeah, it really is kind of a question about what kind of propulsion did they have and speed could they attain to get out of the solar system. Well, and the other thing, I thought. Why the name Charybdis? Because, that was the name of the vessel that would carry, in Greek mythology, that's the vessel.
Actually, that's one of the monsters that Odysseus' crew comes up against.
Oh, that's right. Charybdis is like the whirlpool or something.
Yes, the vortex.
That's
like
right.
The sucking vortex. And then there's a Skya.
Yeah, I was getting Chiron, the actual boatman, confused with Charybdis. That's right.
There's another sci-fi show though where a ship is named the Charybdis as well though. So like I've heard it used before this, but it just seems like when they play with history or they play with the history of the 21st century, which we're in now, it's very kind of slapdash, and it never really fits our actual timelines or theirs anymore as the shows went on.
That's an interesting comment. Yeah.
Because when, I need to look this up, but Star Trek Enterprise stardates
2152 through 2155, something like that.
Yes. Enterprise maiden voyage date. So 2293, James Kirk, Montgomery Scott see the Enterprise D. Time out. Let me. sorry, folks. We're gonna look this up. NX01. Nope. Wanted the NX. Earth's first Warp 5 ship. Launched 2153.
Mm-hmm.
So, if First Contact is 2063, and it launches in 2153,
It's almost 90 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is established, like, Zephyrin Cochrane is not around, or he's disappeared into the galaxy around the time the Warp 5 is commissioned. And Jonathan Archer's dad is already dead, too, because the Vulcans kept pushing back the day that they were going to launch into space. None of this just makes sense from a canon perspective.
It's a little bit loose, yes.
Yeah. I think at some point the writers probably looked around and said, well, we'll forget about this happening.
Right, exactly. It's only people that are 21 years or 20-some years from now that may be dissecting what we wrote, and they'll pay attention to it
Right.
now. Right.
So Troy's sensing of Riker's psyche on the planet does play a really important aspect in terms of assessing the unknown situations between the away team down on the surface and the crew up top trying to break through the interference.
Right.
Again, Troy is a very interesting character because they use her often as the connection between two acts or two parts of the story. And I think Marina Sirtis is always just on point with her acting. Like, she's never overdoing it, and she's never the weak part of a scene.
No, she's not. Right.
So you noted the symbolism of the revolving door. I wanted to see if you wanted to talk about that
Well,
a little bit more.
I brought it up because there seems to be some symbolism there, and I'm trying to think in literature, in the broad base of world literature, if there's other stories that have involved that. I guess in this, for basically this episode, what the writers did, what they may have been thinking, since they're making this into a Alice in Wonderland like puzzle to some degree, is that you're going to go through this revolving door and you don't know where you're going to end up, and you may not be able to get out.
Right.
So it's just part of the whole mystery atmosphere that they're trying to create in the story.
I've always seen it in terms of modern times and modern storytelling as something that can be used almost as a grinder. Like, it takes you in, but it spits you back out.
Yes.
And sometimes what it spits back out is not the same thing that was put into it.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think the revolving door has a very interesting interstitial or liminal aspect to it, in terms of you can't just run through it. You actually have to move in time with the revolving door. And I think that has a lot of interesting aspects in terms of some of my studies of the occult, some of my general knowledge of, like, magical theory in terms of Western magic. The idea of liminal spaces or other worlds and the veil in between. Many cultures throughout the West and throughout Asia and Africa as well. And I think the Aboriginals have a very large body of otherworld myths. But this idea that you can pierce the other world and move between the two places is so common, but it always has to involve some sort of ritual or some sort of correct way of entering. And the revolving door is interesting because there's definitely an incorrect way to enter a revolving door. If too many people try to get in at once, you get stuck.
If you try to go against the flow that it's revolving.
Exactly. There's a lot of symbolism in the revolving door that
right.
carries on many different levels.
Right. Yeah.
So, we've kind of covered the main bits outside of the show. The main crux of the story, when the crew gets in there and discovers what's going on, is that the ship contained the departed Colonel Ritchie, who was apparently outside of the solar system when he was intercepted by aliens, or some sort of, I think he refers to them as
the alien contaminators.
Right, which is an interesting term, alien contaminators, because we never see these aliens. We don't have any information. We just discover what's going on.
Right.
And what we discover is that this this Nastra astronaut outside of our solar system was captured by these contaminators, and I guess at some point during first contact, these contaminators thought him hostile, or thought him and his crew hostile, and in the events of wiping out the crew, or I guess containing them, they realized that they were doing something wrong, and out of guilt, kind of left him in this menagerie, built off of this novel that they found among the remains of the people they killed, which is this kind of cheap, pulpy dime store thriller.
I appreciate your referring to menagerie very much, going back to the original Star Trek pilot.
Right.
Yes.
I think that there's a lot of interesting things about the Royale itself. Colonel Ritchie realizes that, like, the aliens probably put him there because, they felt this sense of guilt, and they just wanted to give Colonel Ritchie something back to, I guess, exist in space as long as he could. And it's very interesting that they looked at our literature, or the available literature that they had, and automatically assumed, like, that's who we are, which says something interesting about them. I bet if these alien contaminators had any sort of literature or bodies of myth or religion, they probably have it in some sort of book, and they would probably say, well, this is who we are. If it's very it would make you wonder, like, what if they found a copy of Moby Dick? Would he be on the ship for the rest of his days playing out Melville? Or what if they had found a copy of Doyle? Would they have walked into a Sherlock Holmes mystery and Data would have been like, I know what's going on here? But, Data would have solved it in 30 seconds.
The other interesting thing I just thought of, and I think it's something when they had read Colonel Ritchie's log, that it was very much a hell, because it was very much, constantly the same thing.
Well, I have the diary entry right here. I can read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I write this in hope that someday it will be read by human eyes. I can only surmise it at this point, but apparently our exploratory shuttle was contaminated by an alien life form which infected and killed all personnel except myself. I awakened to find myself here in the Royale Hotel, precisely as described in the novel I found in my room. And for the last 38 years I have survived here. I have come to understand that the alien contaminators created this place for me out of some sense of guilt, presuming that the novel we had on board the shuttle about the Hotel Royale was in fact a guide to our preferred lifestyles and social habits. Obviously, they thought that this was the world from which I came. I hold no malice toward my benefactors, interesting term for the people that put him through this hell. They could not possibly know the hell they have put me through, for it was such a badly written book, filled with endless cliche and shallow characters, that I shall welcome death when it comes. It's interesting because, clearly they have some sort of holodeck technology or something, some sort of technology that allows them to create some sort of reality that Colonel Ritchie could exist in.
Yes.
It's incredibly... we talk a lot about anthropology on the show, because in many ways when they go and discover new cultures and new civilizations, new species and new civilizations, the show really does become an anthropology episode. Anthropologically speaking, these aliens have a very weird sense of reciprocity when it comes to, dealing with their wrongs. Their sense of comfort is very performative and almost, they think the story or the narrative is what we're here or for, and it's very quickly realized by Colonel Ritchie, this is a bad book that they've put me in. But he doesn't hold it against them. It's very kind of... it's strange that he says, "I hold no malice towards my benefactors," but it's like they put you in this hell, and they probably wiped out a large portion of your crew. There's something about this story that's just kind of...
It's one of those parts of the story we've come up with parts of previous episodes where we don't know what happened, and it leaves a big gap. And
Right.
I think, and just because of time and so forth, they couldn't go into it. So I think that's what might be going on here. But that gets into the questions of how did this ship, where was it when it was intercepted by these aliens? What did they do to the crew? How did they get so far out in space? Who were they even?
Yeah.
And
Well, in general, and we've kind of established this. It just doesn't follow canon.
right, right.
And if this ship had been launched and Colonel Ritchie's crew had been able to get outside the solar system in the year that they said that they did, it surprises me that this alien species wouldn't try to return him to his planet, or it just seems this solution's not practical. And speaking of non-practical solutions, let's talk about Geordi and Pulaski's solution. Let's cut a hole in the surface of the planet, and we'll beam Riker and the rest of the away team out while they instantly freeze to death. Because Pulaski's like, oh, I can just revive them.
They already dealt with cryopreservation of bodies that didn't. Well, it worked, but anyway.
It's just, it seems sometimes like the answers the crew comes up with to deal with the risk they're in is like, let's put our people in deeper risk by actually maybe destroying the thing that they're in.
Sure, yeah.
Because who knows what would have happened if they cut a hole in the Royale.
Or if they could even. Yeah.
I find it interesting the way to end the story. And again, this gets back into these alien contaminators and what they've done to poor Colonel Ritchie. What would have happened if Colonel Ritchie had ended the story? Would he have been able to leave the Royale? But then what would have happened then? Like, he would have walked out into, this pocket of breathable air, and then, had no place to go. It's a very weird kind of...
It's a good question, and, talk about how kind of going against, well, not going against the grain, but I think Riker finally figures it out that what we have to do is just follow the story to the end, that the foreign investors are going to come and buy the hotel. And it's kind of funny how they do it because, of course, Data can detect that the dice are loaded.
Well, craps is a game of probability.
Right.
It's so fun the way he could just kind of squeezes them correctly back into the correct weight. I think we've covered a good bit of the story, and we're, they raise twice the money they need to buy out the hotel because the foreign investors are apparently incredibly generous, so they spread out $12 million to the people around them and then use the rest to buy the...
But then there's another question. Okay, once they figure out how to get out, and they get out, they go back through the revolving doors, and they're beamed up, then does the Royale just continue?
That's a good question. Does the simulation end? There's no real sense to why even have the revolving door in that case.
And what we're talking about, I think the last line that Picard says after Riker and Data and Worf are back, it says, refers to the episode of what happened is a puzzle we may never solve. Right. And it's no kidding, Jean-Luc.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that's going to be just left up in the air. We got through it.
Well, on that note, let's end this episode. Did you enjoy it?
It was tight. It was just entertaining and fun. Yes.
I love Data gambling.
Yes.
The character again of Texas, played by Noble Willingham.
Yes.
Just a lot of fun. He really
Right.
adds a lot to the story. This is another episode where Chief O'Brien's featured a good bit,
Yes.
and
yeah.
he's seen
Right.
a lot more. So
Right.
we'll be seeing a lot more of Colmini going forward. Well, on that, everyone, we'll conclude for now. We will be back very soon to record the next episode, which is Star Trek Season 2, episode 13, Time Squared. We'll see you all then. Thanks.
Bye-bye.